Okay, I think we're ready to get started. So thank you all for joining the Slingshot Memphis Impact Study Expansion webinar. My name is Doug Campbell, and I'm a Senior Impact Associate at Slingshot.
And my name's Haley Moore, the Messaging Manager at Slingshot. Today, we hope to introduce you to Slingshot and the movement to revolutionize poverty fighting, provide an overview of the Slingshot Impact Study and outline the Impact Study expansion process, and then lastly, give you space to ask and have us answer your questions. At Slingshot, we believe poverty fighting can be revolutionized with an outcomes-driven approach. The problem Slingshot exists to address is that we've lacked a standardized approach to measure and understand poverty fighting. I used to be an English teacher back in the day, so clarity of pronouns and words is really important to me. So I want to talk about a few terms in that statement. At Slingshot, we call the interconnected network of organizations, companies, capacity builders, government agencies, philanthropists, volunteers, etc., working to alleviate poverty within a community. We call those collectively the poverty fighting ecosystem. And we believe this collective we of the poverty fighting ecosystem has lacked a standardized approach to measure and understand poverty fighting effectiveness. The word standardized is also important to me. As a former nonprofit program staffer myself, I trust there are lots of organizations making program enhancement decisions based on their own understanding of measurement effectiveness. What Slingshot offers the Memphis poverty fighting ecosystem is a standardized way and process to think about what interventions are and perhaps are not most effective at helping our neighbors experiencing poverty actually realize poverty alleviating benefits. Standardized approaches exist for other sectors of society. Businesses, for example, have things like profit and revenue. No matter if your business sells tractors or technology, there are standardized measures of effectiveness. The sector of poverty alleviation, however, does not have standardized approaches for determining effectiveness. Entities that work toward poverty alleviation might have respective measures and things they look toward for their own effectiveness, but categorically, interventions to address housing, transportation, education, etc., don't all share standardized approaches to measuring their their evidence of effectiveness in poverty alleviation. So at Slingshot, our mission is to be a poverty fighting center of influence that's igniting a movement to revolutionize the way we fight poverty. This is toward our vision that all Memphians, regardless of social or economic circumstances, can have equitable opportunities for personal and economic success. And we do this with a team that brings a varied approach in research, program leadership, and organizational leadership to this work. For example, my co-presenter here, Dr. Doug Campbell, has a PhD in economics and brings that skill set with him to our team's understanding of poverty alleviation. Dr. Stephanie Hill has school leadership experience that provides context for educational impact. Jessie Dryden has spent a significant portion of her career studying poverty displacement. And those are just to name a few. I'm grateful for the team that I get to work alongside. And I certainly invite you to read more detailed descriptions of the backgrounds of my colleagues on Slingshot's website. And with that, I'll hand it over to Dr. Campbell.
Okay, great, thanks. Yeah, so if that all describes the sort of gap in the ecosystem that Slingshot intends to fill and sort of the broader relevance of why that's important within the poverty fighting ecosystem, I think it's helpful to think about the three primary functions that Slingshot does to achieve our mission. So what do we do? And then in later slides, we'll talk about how do we do it. So first, we have impact studies. So an impact study is basically a study, an evidence-based study of an organization's poverty fighting effectiveness. And so we work alongside poverty fighting organizations in the community to study their effectiveness. How are they at fighting poverty? Throughout the impact study process, we can identify opportunities for greater impact. So these are ways based on our rubric and methodology, we can identify for those organizations to build on their strengths and become even better at fighting poverty. Then the third component is funding. So we have the Accelerate Impact Fund, and throughout the year, Slingshot raises money for that fund. And then at the end of the year, we invest directly in poverty-fighting organizations to amplify what's working and hopefully build on that as well. Okay, so part one. What is an impact study? So like I said, an impact study is an evidence-based study that provides an objective perspective about an organization's poverty-fighting effectiveness across 4 dimensions. I'll get to the 4 dimensions in our next slide, but I just want to mention that you're going to hear the word evidence quite a bit over the course of the presentation, and organizations that work alongside Slingshot hear the word evidence quite a bit too. So how do we study impact? Well, there's sort of 3 basic phases for an impact study. First is we build a foundation. And so sort of in the early stages of working alongside a poverty-fighting organization, Slingshot builds a foundation by collecting sort of basic information about the organization, its history, its leadership, the programs that it offers, who the programs serve, how do they do so, et cetera. Such that in the next phase, when we start to gather evidence about that organization's performance across 4 dimensions, we're gathering that evidence on a very solid foundation that we've built in part 1. Then once we've gathered all the evidence and confirmed it with our partner organizations, we can then synthesize the evidence into conclusions, which lead to poverty-fighting impact results and opportunities for greater impact. So there's 2 basic types of impact studies. One is a baseline, the other is an update. So for organizations that work with us, so the first year that an organization works alongside Slingshot, they go through the baseline impact study process. It's a fairly exhaustive process. It's pretty extensive. And this is where we first put together an organization's impact profile and first build an understanding of how they fight poverty. The baseline impact study only occurs 1 time, typically lasts about 4 to 5 months in duration. Meeting time is about 15 hours in person or Zoom, whichever is best, although that can vary depending on the organization, number of programs, et cetera. So the baseline impact study occurs the first year that Slingshot and an organization work alongside each other. In subsequent years of partnership, we have the impact study update. So each subsequent update focuses on what has changed in the last year. Sometimes that's a lot, sometimes that's very little. Impact study updates occur annually, take about 2 to 3 months. It just kind of depends on how much there's changed, how many changes there have been at the organization in question. Okay, so if that's an impact study and the 2 different types of impact studies, what are the 4 dimensions? So we have 4 dimensions that are part of the impact study process: benefit cost ratio, systems level change, use of best practices, and measurement infrastructure. So benefit cost ratio, what that does is it estimates the benefits created by an organization for the people it serves relative to the cost of creating those benefits. So these are dollar weighted or dollar value benefits that are generated by each dollar of cost incurred. It's very important to study benefit cost ratio for organizations because that helps to enhance the allocation of resources by understanding poverty fighting benefits created by programs and interventions. So with benefit cost ratio, we focus strictly on the organization's direct participants and their families. But we take a broader perspective on poverty fighting impact with the second dimension, and that's systems level change. This assesses the magnitude of an organization's poverty fighting change in the community beyond or outside of its core programs. It's important for us to look at systems level change because that helps us to validate the most impactful types of partnerships and policy changes that a given organization is positioned to pursue. Sort of sitting behind all of that is the use of best practices, which helps us determine the extent to which an organization adheres to best practices for its programs and staff performance management. This is important because it helps to improve the magnitude of poverty-fighting outcomes achieved by using evidence-based interventions that have the greatest efficacy. And finally, sort of the foundation of all of this measurement infrastructure. That helps us to evaluate the effectiveness with which an organization collects, analyzes, and uses data to improve decision-making as it relates to fighting poverty. This then provides a foundation for an evidence-based continuous improvement process that enables greater poverty-fighting impact. Okay, so those are the 4 dimensions that are built into the impact study. What we do over the course of the impact study process is we gather information, evidence, from the organization being studied, from other sources like academic articles, census data, et cetera, and we use all of that evidence to determine where an organization is across each of those 4 dimensions. And we use that to assign an impact study result, okay? So the impact study results look like this. So if we look across the top, we can see, starting with week, there's 4 impact study results that are kind of grouped together. Results are assigned based on the strength of evidence and the amount of evidence. So for example, with benefit cost ratio, if the evidence that we collect and use in our analysis indicates that the estimated benefits that an organization produces for its direct participants exceeds the cost of producing those benefits, that suggests an impact result of at least strong. If we find that those estimated benefits substantially exceed costs, that's very strong. We find that the estimated benefits and costs are about the same, that's at least neutral. Looking across the other dimensions, for example, measurement infrastructure, if the evidence that we collect based on our rubric indicates that the organization has a basic measurement infrastructure and use of data to understand and improve impact, that's at least neutral. And as we move further to the right, that is based on more evidence or stronger evidence of poverty-fighting impact in that dimension. Now you might notice that there's a 5th result over to the left that's unclear. We haven't ever really used this at all. We reserve it though, just in case there's just not enough evidence for us to confidently assign a result to a specific organization in a specific dimension based on the evidence we've collected. Okay, so what are the benefits of completing an impact study? Well, first of all, we think that the impact study process, the results that arrive at the end, trajectories that can occur over time, and all of that taken together provides you, an organization, with an objective evaluation of your poverty-fighting impact. So we're able to say that this organization ranks at least strong in one dimension, at least neutral in another, very strong in another dimension. And then if you see in the top left, those arrows indicate how an organization is changing over time. Is it overall getting better? Is it holding about the same? Is it maybe getting a little bit less effective in its poverty-fighting impact? So in addition to the objective evaluation of poverty-fighting impact, Slingshot also equips organizations with deliverables to communicate impact. So at the end of the impact study process, we provide a baseline impact study summary report, which summarizes the evidence and sort of how we arrived at our conclusions, and then provides detailed opportunities for greater impact at the end. Those detailed opportunities are first of all summarized and then spelled out in terms of what's the basis for the opportunity, how could that affect poverty-fighting impact, and then what are some ideas or suggestions on how that opportunity could be implemented. But that's not the end. We also provide thought partnership as organizations seek to pursue those opportunities for greater impact, if it's the ones that we've identified or if it's other ones that they've identified on their own.
It's really important to us that these insights we provide are valuable to both the organizations we work alongside and the community at large. You'll see here some comments from leaders and other program staff from 8 of the 41 organizations where we have the opportunity to work alongside. I'll give you a few seconds to read 1 to 2 of these for yourself, and all the slides will be available after this presentation, so you can read these in full at that time. All right, so 2 times a year, Slingshot expands the number of organizations we work alongside. And tying this back to our mission, the more organizations we're learning from and alongside, the more insights we can provide to the entire poverty fighting ecosystem, which accelerates the movement to revolutionize poverty fighting. So the following criteria must be met for an organization to work alongside us. The first one is a meaningful proportion of participants are or at risk of experiencing poverty. Programming helps improve the health, income, or quality of life for participants. Programming is geographically focused on Memphis and Shelby County. For national and statewide organizations, they need to have an affiliate office within Shelby County. Have at least 1 complete fiscal year of financial and program data, including for the most recently completed fiscal year. Have a board of directors in the case of a nonprofit organization, or be under fiscal control of an organization with a board of directors. Have staff capacity to participate in a 4 to 5 month baseline impact study that Doug described that includes 10 to 15 meetings and several data requests. And then the timeline for this impact study expansion, we offer impact study expansion in 2 rounds each year, one beginning in March and another beginning in August. And so our preference is that organizations who are participating in this round of impact study expansion have fiscal years that begin October through March, and that just allows us to be able to launch into the impact study within a reasonable time frame. And then the expansion process, phase 1 is completing a questionnaire about your organization, and we hope to just understand how your organization fights poverty. And that is open now and concludes. Doug, it looks like these have the old dates.
Yeah, unfortunately they do. So I can say from memory that the phase 1 of the impact study expansion process opened on Monday, August 15th. That's Monday of this week. And it closes on Friday, September 2nd.
And we'll update these for the slides that we send out. So you'll have those to reference in writing, and it's on our website as well. And then if invited to phase 2, the goal there is to understand your organization's programs and interventions, and you'll complete a questionnaire about your programs for that as well. And then phase 3 is also by invitation only, and that is a more detailed request to get to know each other and ask remaining questions. And there's a site visit with that component as well. This is a list of the poverty fighting organizations we're currently working alongside. So you can review some known organizations in this city that we've had the pleasure of learning from and alongside. And we're grateful that these organizations have opened up to us and helped us study their impact.
Yeah, and I'll mention that some of these organizations, Slingshot has been working alongside since 2017. Organizations like Advance Memphis, Nurse Family Partnership, Purdue Center of Hope, and Communities and Schools at Memphis. We've been working with those organizations for about 5.5 years now. Some of the other organizations we've only been working with for a few months, and we're very excited about the impact study expansion process this fall, because that means we'll be able to add even more organizations to our work, and then continue to do so next year and in ongoing years. Okay, so this slide captures some advice from organizations that completed a baseline impact study. I'll pause for a minute and let you read over some of the information. I'd say that overall one theme is to make time for it. As you can see in the top left, there is a decent amount of time involved for organizations who are going through the impact study process, especially the baseline impact study process. Although I will say that Slingshot tries to make it as easy as possible. We try to do as much of the work ourselves before, during, and after meetings, just to make the time cost for our partner organizations as minimal as possible. Okay, so we will be sending out an updated version of these slides with the correct dates for the impact study expansion process, and I'll let you all read over that on your own time. Now, we get to the Q&A process. So we're in phase 1, and this, like I said, opens on August 15th, closes Friday, September 2nd. This is the last slide that we have to share. So if you all have any questions, this would be a great time for you to share them. And I think that you all can share a question directly with Haley and I by typing in the chat window. That will go directly to us. So who wants to go first? Okay, here's a great question. So what organizations are a good fit to participate in Slingshot's impact study? So I think Haley talked about some of the sort of basic requirements for organizations in terms of sort of eligibility to work alongside us. One thing I would say is that organizations that are a good fit are organizations that have a clear connection to fighting poverty, and organizations that, again, are focused on Memphis and Shelby County. I will also mention that, in addition to the time cost, there's a lot of questions and answers and so forth involved in the impact study process, and it requires that organizations share a lot of information with us. So I think transparency is really important for organizations that are participating in the impact study process.
Doug, I would just like to clarify. I think you said use the chat. That
chat that's
is closed. The Q&A should be open.
Gotcha. Yes, so another question we've just received through the Q&A window, not the chat window, thank you for that, is will you share this recording? Yes, we will share this recording. I'll send a follow-up email later today or tomorrow with a link to the recording, a copy of the slides, and then some other materials about Slingshot. So thank you for the question. This is great. Another question. How much does it cost an organization to participate in Slingshot's impact study? Nothing. Well, there's obviously the time cost of attending meetings, preparing for meetings, and that sort of thing. But in terms of any monetary cost associated with it, there's no cost whatsoever. Here's another question. How many organizations do we anticipate working with during the next impact study phase? That's a great question. I would say probably in the 5 to 7 range. So it depends on the number of organizations that complete the phase 1 questionnaire, which is live and open on our website right now. And I'll share a link to that in my follow-up email. It depends on the type of organizations as well. So we might have more this time, we might have fewer. I will say that Slingshot aspires to add a significant number of organizations to our work over the next 3 years. So I'd say roughly 5 to 7 in this cycle. So next question, must an organization have a champion from the Slingshot organization in order to be chosen for the next phase? I don't think so. No, I think if what is meant by champion that there's someone within Slingshot sort of advocating on behalf of that organization, I would say no. In terms of what organizations are invited to advance from phase 1 to phase 2, that's determined by a group of Slingshot staff that's shared with our board of directors, Impact Study Expansion Committee. So this is very much a teamwork, and it's not necessary for an organization to have like a champion or an advocate within Slingshot in order to advance. I hope that answers your question, but if not, please follow up with an additional question. Haley, do you want to take this one? This is I think a good messaging question.
Yeah, the question is, what do people use the report for? Katie said, obviously it could help with fundraising. Other thoughts? Just curious what's been done in the past. So first, I'll speak from experience. Actually came to Slingshot having worked at an organization that was studied by Slingshot. And yes, the fundraising component is really helpful to just have a concrete understanding of what your benefit cost ratio is, to then be able to present that to funders and say, look, for every dollar that you invest in us, we have evidence that suggests there's, $1.20 of poverty fighting benefits to our program participants. So I would say that alone is really valuable to the organizations that we study. And Doug, you might be able to speak a little bit more on examples of how people have used these reports in the past. But I know like the opportunities for greater impact that our program team provides. Boards use that to inform strategic planning, and there's other ways that people incorporate it into long-term visioning for their organization and how to increase their poverty fighting impact.
Yeah, that is all 100% true. We've had organizations who've shared sort of a very summarized version of the impact study report on their website, on social media. They've used language in social media posts, in grant applications that's taken from the deliverables that Slingshot produces. Slingshot has presented to boards, board of directors, boards of advisors, and like Haley said, we've seen organizations take the opportunities for greater impact that Slingshot identifies and build them into strategic plans. So I hope that answers the question. If there are any follow-up questions, please let me know. Okay, so we have another question. What happens after Slingshot's impact study is completed? It's a great question. And this is true for either the baseline impact study or the impact study update. So once the process is done, sort of the last touch point in the process is a meeting, again, either in person or via Zoom, where Slingshot staff members and leadership share the results of the impact study process. So that's the impact study results that we looked at earlier across those 4 dimensions. We share opportunities for greater impact, and we have a dialogue about what we found. And we sort of check in with our organizations to make sure that those opportunities for greater impact make sense. And then we share afterwards sort of a final version of the impact study report. Again, if it's a baseline report or an update report. We also share a sort of 2-page summary of the organization's overall impact profile, which is nice and concise and can be shared on social media. After that, we are available for thought partnership. If an organization has any questions about any of the opportunities that we've identified or opportunities that they've identified themselves, we're happy to work alongside you to sort of think through them. And then again, at the end of each year, there's an investment in each organization who has completed an impact study, sort of based on the overall results of the impact study for that organization relative to other organizations. Haley, do you want to take this next one?
Yes, so the question is, how can I receive communications about the expansion process and timeline? So all the information, in addition to the webinar recording, you'll receive in the PowerPoint slides that will have the corrected deadlines. We apologize for that. All this information can be found on our website. If you go to our homepage, the slide that Doug has up right now, the top right button says work together, and that's where you would find all the information that you need about deadlines and things like that. You can also sign up for our newsletter. That can be done at the bottom of our homepage, or just email myself or Doug. I think Doug's information it will be included in all the materials that has been sent out.
Yeah, anyone who has signed up or participated in the webinar will receive a follow-up email tomorrow from me. So if you ever have any questions, you can just shoot me a message directly and I'll be happy to respond. We really appreciate these questions. One of the great things about these webinars is we get new questions every time. So do you all have any more questions? Don't be shy. Just a bit of feedback. Thank you. Someone said fascinating, and thank you so much. Really appreciate that. One of the things I'll mention about the webinar today, and the one that we offered in the spring, is that several organizations registered for the webinar that were new to me and Haley, that we hadn't heard of before in the community. So it's really, really great to see not just organizations and people sign up for the webinar, but organizations that were new to us at Slingshot.
And that's really, I think that captures like just an internal value of ours, that we are always learning. You know, we don't claim to be end all be all knowledge bearers of everything and the good work that's being done in the Memphis community. We really do enjoy learning alongside organizations, and that includes learning fascinating, important work that's being done in our community.
Yeah, absolutely. So just a bit of feedback. Thank you for that. And we're excited to continue through the impact study process and learn more about organizations. I'll go ahead and mention again, I'll be sharing a link to the phase 1 questionnaire. The goal of the phase 1 questionnaire and the phase 2 questionnaire is to ask as few questions as possible. We don't want this to be a 50-page grant application. We want this to be as easy and efficient as possible for organizations that are interested in working alongside Slingshot, as well as Slingshot ourselves. Okay, last call for questions. I don't want to keep anyone on the webinar for any longer than we have to, so last call. All right, you're going to get an email from me very, very soon, later today or tomorrow. The information about Slingshot, link to the webinar, impact study expansion process, etc. So if you have any questions, you can follow up directly with me or through the avenues that Haley mentioned earlier. All right, well, thank you, everyone. Again, I am Doug Campbell. And that is Haley Moore. And we really appreciate you joining us today in this webinar. Thank you very much, and hope you all have a great afternoon.